Hey guys, it's Nikki. For those of you who are returning to the channel, welcome back. For those of you who are maybe new and have not watched any of my content before, hi, welcome in. I am a huge fan of Nvidia Nikki. I have played the game since launch, and if you are familiar with my content, you know that I am very invested in the story and the lore of Nvidia Nikki. It is very important to me, and I find it, for the most part, very well done. But this patch has been a nightmare. I'm going to mainly be touching upon two things. First is my initial reaction as a day one player of the game to the Sea of Stars and all of that. And then I'm going to talk about why I think the replacement of the introduction of the game for new players, the altering of the story, is objectively a worse opening than the original. From an analytical, literary perspective, I think the first intro is objectively a better introduction than what they changed it to. And I think that there are a lot of issues with the new one. So as I've said, I am a day one player, right? So I've played this game since launch, and I've played every single day with a couple exceptions. Sometimes I missed my dailies, but I never missed any event content. I never missed any story content, nothing. So I am full knowledge of this game, and I read a lot of the written lore in this game. So like little letters or books and little novels within the game, I read them. And a lot of my Let's Play is exploring those narratives within the game that many people kind of skip over because they just don't have time to read it or they don't have interest. And I kind of go over it. And then I also analyze each story chapter or chapters in the main story. And I'm still working through that, so sorry for the delay. My initial reaction to Sea of Stars was interesting because I am not a franchise player, and that's a term I'm going to be using a lot. People who have played other Nikki games within the franchise obviously knew what Sea of Stars is, but as someone who was very excited about Nvidia Nikki up until its launch and has been a player of the game since day one, I am not a franchise player. So I have no idea, or had no idea, what the Sea of Stars is, what it meant within like the Nikki universe with the timelines and none of that. I have no idea what it was. So when they initially announced the Sea of Stars kind of theme or event for this upcoming patch, there was a lot of hype on Twitter, and people very excited who are familiar with the franchise were all over Twitter saying, oh my gosh, the Sea of Stars, like this is a huge event for the Nikki franchise. Like each game has this like Sea of Stars event in the game, and it's a big deal. Like it's fundamental to like the Nikki universe and each timeline, which is like each game. It's like a big deal. And so I was excited. I was like, oh my gosh, like as a lore player and someone who's very interested in the story, there's been kind of a drought in like genuine storytelling with the events as of late. They're not horrid, but it's kind of like filler episodes. And everyone loves a good filler episode, right? But I feel like it's just been consistent filler and nothing substantial to sink our teeth into. I think the closest thing we got was the spooky season, but even then it was just like we barely got crumbs about any real serious lore regarding the history of Mirrorland and the people who are significant to this timeline, to Mirrorland itself, to Wishfield. We got very little information, barely any answers. So it felt not frustrating to the point of me dropping the game, because I'm all in at this point, because I still have a lot of curiosity about the storyline, especially the world and the lore. Like there's a lot here to work with. I feel like we're just not getting enough, right? And so when they said, oh, the Sea of Stars, it's this huge lore event in each Nikki game, I was like, I was like a little housefly. I was rubbing my face and then rubbing my hands. I was ready, right? I was ready for this. I was like, we're going to get a buffet of lore. Finally, they're going to feed us. I opened the game and luckily I had a friend who opened the game after the patch And she was like, hey, you want to record right away. Like, don't just open the game to do your dailies and wait to record when you have time later. Literally only open the game if you're ready to record, because it like shunts you straight into the story. And I was like, oh, okay, because they've never done that before, right? And so I was recording right away. I had made sure I had all the footage and everything was set. I didn't really know what I was watching. As someone who knows the story, right, from the initial chapters about the timeline with Giovanni and all the characters and what we go through in those initial first main chapter stories, I was able to piece together what was being referenced. And I'm pointing this out because this is going to come into context later when we discuss a new player's experience, right? I, as someone who's played the game from day one, who has done all the story stuff, I was able to put together what I was hearing and sort of what was happening, right? I was confused that we were suddenly, without introduction, without any lead up, Nikki was just floating in space without Momo. She was covered in ice, and we have, of course, the visuals are beautiful, right? That's never been an issue with this game. The game has always been visually very stunning. The music was stunning. That was never a problem, right? That's, of course, beautiful. But if there's a struggle to understand what we're seeing, right, to digest what we're seeing, the impact it has on us, right, emotionally, is lessened because we're just confused or trying to keep up rather than fully enjoying what we're watching. And that's coming from someone who has played all of the chapters of this game. Again, I'm going to touch back on this when we come to talk about how they've changed the intro and what a new player might experience. So I was a little lost, right? I was happy to experience something new or interesting, but I was lost as to how Nikki got here, what's even going on. Like, yes, everything's beautiful and cool, but what's happening? What's going on? Where's Momo? Is this a dream? Where the heck did Nikki? How did we even get into space? What's going on, right? So initial reaction was that. And there's nothing bad about having your audience of players be shocked, right? Of wondering what's going on. That's intrigue, right? You want intrigue from your players. But as we started to continue through the cutscenes and stuff, I was continuing to scramble to piece together some answers, and not about like greater lore. No. Simple answers to how are we here? Why are we here? What's going on? What's the importance of this? Why am I being taught to jump? Because I didn't understand when I first played the update. I didn't realize, and no one did, of course, initially, that this was going to replace the intro to the game as a whole, right? So I didn't realize that this was the new tutorial, right? So I was like, why am I being taught to jump? What is the point of this? What is the intent behind this character interacting with Nikki this way? And Nikki, at least to me, felt unrecognizable. I didn't know who this character was because she's just kind of clueless and just being led, right? There's not a lot of personality there in those moments. And I'm bringing this up because I'm going to be comparing this to the initial introduction where there's lots of personality that Nikki gives in the intro. But anyways, let's put a pin in that. So Nikki felt a little passive in the narrative, which isn't inherently a problem, right? This is something that happens in a lot of stories where the protagonist has moments in the story where they're passive. They're kind of just being led, right? They're not really making choices or decisions. They're not having opinions. They're just being led into the story, right? Through the story. Of course, you don't want that all the time because that's boring. Who wants a passive protagonist? But I was still like, why is Nikki not reacting? Where's Momo? Why does she not have an opinion on this? What's going on? So I immediately just think, oh, this must be a dream. And it does end up being some sort of like vision slash not dream, but she does wake up in her like OG Nikki attire with the pigtails and the braids and her little dress in some field somewhere. And she's like, is this a dream? And then the seer shows up, in all her floating floating icy pink hair glory. And she's like, no, that's not a dream. And she kind of explains to Nikki, you know, a little bit about what that was. And again, I was like struggling to piece together why we were having this interaction. Who is this? Why are we being told this? What does this have to do with where we left off in the story last time? Like, this really just felt out of nowhere. And then of course we get led to, you know, the Sea of Stars, and Momo is just blipped into existence like a reverse Thanos snap, which was confusing. And then there's one line of recognition from Nikki, and then the seer is going on to talk about other things. And listen, I'm not going to get into the analyzing of the lore in this video. This video is mostly just to discuss my disappointment with the update as a whole. So I'm gonna be leaving the analysis for another video, because then this video will be like 5 hours long if you know anything about my content. So I'm gonna leave the analysis for later, so we're not getting into the details of the lore, but I do want to discuss how it is a weak entry into the game as a chapter of the story and as an intro, the new intro. So after Momo's there, we get a couple lines about timelines, we get a couple lines about ability outfits, and then we're just let into essentially the co-op lobby, which is what I call the Sea of Stars map. Because there's nothing to do there, really. It's very empty. No like lore nuggets. I explored the heck out of it, every nook and cranny, because I was like, there's no way they didn't have not one piece of narrative, like a little note or a journal from someone or something, a rock carving or a mural or something for us to interact with or investigate. Because in every other map of Infinity Nikki, the map is littered with little journals and things you can read, little snippets of history of that place. And that's what I love. Some people don't interact with that, and that's fine, right? Everyone enjoys the game differently, but I was looking for like little lore bits. I'm like, maybe, you know, the seer person who I still don't really understand who they are or what their relationship with Nikki is. I mean, obviously I think you're not supposed to fully know, right? But it still felt like very little information was given when there's kind of this very familiar dynamic, and Nikki doesn't seem all that perplexed about what's going on. Like I said, she felt very passive, and so I was left confused as a player, like, how am I supposed to feel about her? Obviously, her design is beautiful and she looks cool, right? And her voice actor is very talented. But I'm, what am I supposed to feel? Who is she to Nikki, and what is her place, right? Obviously, we're not going to know all the details right away, because they're never going to do that. They're going to drip feed us, you know, answers, and that's fun too, right? Or for us to discover secrets about the lore as we go. But I feel like basic information, basic dynamic establishment needed to be made for us to connect to this character, because you want your players to connect. You want your players to care, especially in a game like this where you're connecting lore to outfits, you're connecting chapters to you know, part of the gacha system, the exploration. You want people to explore your world, spend time in your game, right? So you want players to invest in the dynamics of these characters, you know, the relationships they have, their meaning in the world, you know. That's part of getting players to come back every day. Obviously not everyone cares as much as others about lore or like the details of stuff, but getting re-engagement, you know, part of that isn't just wowing players with visuals or beautiful music or talented actors. You have to also provide something substantial within the narrative to get people coming back, whether that be a conflict they can't wait to see resolved, or a piece of lore, like an answer that you slowly give pieces of information about, and so they, you know, the players can slowly build up to the big answer, right? Or they can speculate on the big answer to this lore, and that's how you keep people coming back, or at least remain interested within the fandom and participating in the fandom, right? To keep the to keep the hype going, and your game relevant within the mainstream, right? It's all connected. It's all connected. And I'm bringing this up and I'm talking about this because aside from my opinions, right, which are not necessarily critiques because opinions and critiques are different, I'm now going to talk about my critiques of this new update and the decision to completely alter the intro. Now, I think I'm going to say disclaimer. I think they've changed the intro, small changes to the intro previously, like before 1.5, but it was still relatively the same. It was just like small changes that didn't really mess with like meaning Ina and stuff like that. But this patch has completely retconned that experience. And I want to explain to you why I think this is unfortunate. From a new player's perspective, right? You're working with a clean slate, especially someone who is not a franchise player. So someone who is not familiar with the Nikki franchise at all. They have no knowledge of previous games, which is probably, I don't want to say the majority, right? But a lot of new players aren't going to be franchise players because those players are most likely already playing Nvidia Nikki, right? Franchise players probably started playing near launch, right? And they've been involved with the game for a while now. So this change is meant to assist new players and introducing new players into the game and into the fandom, right? So catering to franchise players with the Sea of Stars is fine, right? But why are we taking that franchise player kind of fan service, let's say? I know that's not really a great term for it, but you guys know what I mean. Why are we taking that concept and applying it to new players who most likely have no knowledge of Nikki at all and the games at all? Because as someone who has not played other Nikki games myself, Nvidia Nikki is my first Nikki game. If I had started the game during this patch, I would be so confused, and I'm going to walk you guys through why. The opening, the Sea of Stars opening, was overwhelming as heck, and I have played the game. I didn't know what to hold on to. I didn't know what to think. Nikki, like I said, is very passive, so I can't relate to her because she's not giving me a response. She's not giving a reaction. She's just kind of there and just going with the flow, and so I don't know what to think. I'm looking at my player character, my protagonist. What does she think? How does she feel about this? Obviously, most people don't actively ask these questions, but that's part of, interacting with any medium of storytelling, right? In a movie or a show or a book or a manga series or a game, we look to our protagonist, whether that be a player character or the main character in the story. We look to them as a base point, right? They're our foundation for the whole experience. And so when I see a Nikki who is passive in the Sea of Stars, I don't know what to think because she's not giving me anything. Is this shocking, right? Is this galaxy thing normal? I look to my protagonist to see, does she think it's normal? And if it's not, if she does think it's normal or if she doesn't think it's normal, that gives me context on how to feel about what's happening, about what I'm seeing. And this is kind of in-depth narrative work here. So I hope I'm not being too confusing, but the fact that it's overwhelming in this instance does not work in the game's favor. Overloading new players with information, both visually and audibly, like what they can hear through dialogue and music, that's not a way to encourage investment in terms of like emotional investment. I'm not talking like financially. Of course, that's what they want too. But the first step to getting people to possibly spend money is investment in their game emotionally, right? There's a connection there they want to establish. Of course, yes, the pretty dresses, people just want the pretty dresses, and that's great too. But it feels even better to get the pretty dress that also has significant meaning to Nikki or the lore or the world, or it gives you a cool ability that allows you to express yourself through Nikki in the world in a very cool way, whether that be like floating or flying or water walking or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's tied to something. So it's still emotional investment, even if it's, on a more shallow end. And of course, people can enjoy the game however they want. So I'm not making any commentary on that. But for a new player with no knowledge of Nikki as a person, no knowledge of this universe at all, they have no idea what to think with the Sea of Stars intro. What are we looking at? Yes, it's beautiful, and that's great. You want to wow new players. You know, you want players to go, oh my gosh, this is so well done. This is so beautiful. You know, this is what's going on. Oh, look at this pretty dress. But if it's all wow and no substance, then players start feeling lost. And that is where you get disconnect. That's when people start to pull back and say, well, I don't know what's going on. I can't keep up with what's going on. So I'm just gonna be passive. I'm just gonna let the game go. And that's where you can lose interest, right? Or people just want to click through because they're lost, right? They don't know what's going on in the story. They're just gonna click through content. And some people do that anyway, and that's fine, right? But the overall criticism is about how this new intro narratively is weaker than the original. And introducing Momo, with one line, the seer says, oh, you have this companion, and she like blips him into existence, and he's like, oh, Nikki, and Nikki's like, oh, Momo. And then the very next line, they're moving on to talking about some other stuff about timelines and lore. And of course, a new player's like, what? Like, what timelines, lore, what's going on? Who are they talking about? You know, they mention Ina the curator, and I think I was watching, I'll actually link her video down below. She's a VTuber, and she was kind of going over like a couple people's Twitter posts about people who like created new accounts and were going through the new story, like step by step, and kind of showed videos of like what they replaced. So I'll link her down below. Shout out. I don't know her personally, but thank you. Her video helped me do my research for this video. But anyways, so you can go watch that if you're interested on seeing like a step-by-step of the new intro. But essentially, you get a mention of Ina, and then you see her very briefly. The original cutscene is completely gone. New players are not gonna know what the heck or who the heck Ina is, or Ina is, and who, like, what's her significance. They mention the Heart of Infinity, but in the original cutscene, you know, you can see it. You see the Heart of Infinity. You watch physically as Ina takes it from her chest and bestows it, literally shoves it into Nikki. And you see the transfer, and it visually, this storytelling helps to ground players into, even though they don't know the intricacies of this lore, right? This is brand new information. We're able to walk players through this transfer and the importance of it, and that this whole game is surrounding this event, right? This is what the game is about. Nikki receiving the Heart of Infinity, this is what the whole game is centered around, right? And her journey of trying to essentially use it without turning into a monster, right? Which is what the seer warns her about, and that a previous timeline, Nikki would turn into a monster. And it's like, people who have not played the game do not understand what the impact of that is. One, because they don't know Nikki yet. So how the hell are they going to know what the real emotional impact of that statement is? We, as players who have played since day one, I understand who Nikki is, right? I know who she is. So I know how devastating it is to hear that she actually went mad, that this power in a different timeline actually drove this kind-hearted, sweet, sincere, selfless young girl into a state of madness so deep, she became a monster and destroyed the world. I understand the emotional depth of that statement because I know Nikki. A new player, though, isn't. And Nikki, in the actual game, in the cutscene, hearing this information, seems mildly concerned. She's like, oh. It's like, what do you mean, oh? Like, I feel this is the criticism of her passivity. It doesn't allow the players to understand what kind of person Nikki is, right? It's just a very general reaction to being told that you were the reason the world got destroyed, right? And new players don't know Nikki, so they don't understand the emotional impact of that statement, right? The original opening was great. Is anything perfect? Of course not. Nothing is perfect. But what I think the original intro did well was establish to you, the player, who Nikki is and what we're doing, what the point and the heart and the soul of this game is, right? Obviously, we weren't given all the answers. We didn't need to. And the Sea of Stars still, I think, could have worked if they really wanted to revamp the opening, but it needs an incomplete rewrite if they wanted to replace the intro. And I think there's no need, because in the original, Nikki starts in the attic, right, of her mother's home. And she's looking for a dress for her graduation ball. It's not clarified if this is high school graduation or college graduation, and I think it's left a little ambiguous on purpose so people can, if people of any age can relate to Nikki, because relating to Nikki not only is important as a player, right? You want the participant of your story to, in some way, sympathize or relate to your main character. They don't have to be exactly like them, but giving them something to relate to is very important. And especially in a game like this that's catering to young women, catering to the idea of growing up and coming into womanhood and what it means to find who you are, and identity and inner strength is the whole point of the game, right? It's the messaging. So starting Nikki out in her mother's attic and having Nikki, Momo says, we weren't allowed to be up here when we were young. So there's already this air of mystery. Why is she up here? Why now, right? Oh, they're up here looking for a dress. And you see these pictures on the walls of the ability outfits, and Nikki is looking at them with curiosity and wonder. And we're already, right, in Nikki's shoes at this point. The player is experiencing the same wonder and curiosity Nikki is, because Nikki is also new to this, right? She's also seeing all of this for the first time. Of course, Nikki in Sea of Stars in the new intro is also not knowing what's going on. But the difference between that and the old intro is that we are given visual and narrative context to her wonder, to her confusion, and her dynamic with Momo allows us to learn who Nikki is through this lack of knowledge about what's happening, right? So let me say that in a less confusing way. So Nikki is looking through all this stuff. She finds a magical dress in a wardrobe, every little girl's freaking dream, that whisks her away to this magical place, right? And we have this insane dress on that's got planets rotating on it, very whimsical, right? Like we start in this small little attic and suddenly we're transported into this fantasy world. Everybody loves a story like that, right? And we have Aina talking to us in this mysterious way, in our minds, and we have the tutorial of kind of navigating these mysterious ruins, and the music swelling as we come into these open landscapes of this floating castle with this endless sky, and the colors are kind of dim, so we get this feeling of abandonment from this place. And there's this sense of wonder, of finding something that was lost, rediscovering what was hidden, even though we don't know what it is and we don't know much about Nikki or the place that we've come to. These questions are still being contextualized for us because Nikki always has an opinion about, wow, look at this place, and or Momo, we have to, we're gonna miss graduation, and we learn about Nikki in this way, who she is, not just where we are in the story, right, in this new place, but we're also getting really crucial information about who Nikki is as a person. And I think this is very important and something the new intro completely lacks, because Nikki is very passive, because she has to be, because in that Sea of Stars intro, there's so much going on. There's not room for character work for Nikki, because we have to give all of the screen time and all of the wonder and all of people's attention to what we're seeing, because what we're seeing is insane, right? Whales in space and moon boats and falling stars and collapsing universes, and if we have this incredible dresses and all of this stuff right in our faces. But the initial intro, we're starting off small and we're slowly inching closer and closer to something amazing, right? The attic, then the dress, then the being whisked away, then the mysterious voice, then we're traversing these ruins, and then we come across the tower, and then we see Ina tied up, and there's a visual understanding, right? We contextually understand she's probably been here for a while. From the outside, right? The ruins looking abandoned and desolate with monsters, and then we come in here, she's tied up, she's chained up, and she's slowly lowered to the ground. She's talking about how she's been waiting for us, and that the dress that we're wearing calls to her, and that she used to dance with its owner. And then we see her in pain removing this insane heart of infinity that we don't understand, right? And she's shoving it into Nikki's chest and burdening Nikki, but Nikki still doesn't really understand this yet. And of course, she's going to come to understand what the real meaning of this is later, but we don't need to know all those answers right away. But the important part is that new players are able to, one by one, step by step, slowly sip this new world in. We're taking it one drink at a time, right? We're savoring each new step into this new world. And then after the interaction with Ina, you know, these players are given a little taste of wonder and mystery and magic. And then we're thrown into the Wishfield Memorial, or the Flora Wish Memorial area, which is where we find our first Whim Star. The importance of finding our first Whim Star is an entire cutscene within itself. It's important. In the new intro, Nikki finds her first Whim Star in the Ina Desolate Ruins area, and she just collects it and moves on. So the importance of introducing this collectible that will be important for essentially feeding and growing your power, your connection to the heart of infinity. It might seem like something, yeah, we can cut that, right? It's okay, we can skip over that. We'll just have her collected at the, you know, Ina's place and move on. But I think this is fundamentally undercutting the importance of the story, because the story is, especially being what's emphasized in the Sea of Stars with the Seer, is that she is saying you need to find a way to make use of the heart of infinity in a way that doesn't lead you to destruction, and hence the whole world to destruction too, right? She's saying that the way we interact with the heart, how we grow our power, is really important. The decisions we make matter, right? Just because she was able to give us another chance doesn't mean we have infinite chances, and it's important that we make the right choices this time, or that's it, right? So you would think that the collectible that directly links us to that element of the story, linking the gameplay collectible aspect to the story, the narrative, with the Whimstar collection, you would think they would give that some time. And in the original intro, they did. They gave this moment where she felt what it was like to take in this piece of the heart of infinity, and that it's meaningful. And so each time that we collect one, we are remembering that first cutscene in, you know, unconsciously. This is another layer. This is very detailed, you know, discussion about how games and narrative are crafted, but you're emphasizing to the player the importance of the star. You're also inherently emphasizing the importance of the heart of infinity, which is in essence the heart of the whole game, right? It's all revolving around this and Nikki's journey, her relationship with this power. So having the cutscene emphasize the heart of infinity, the little star, the Whim Stars, and having Nikki, giving Nikki a moment to share how she feels about that is important. She shares with Momo, wow, I feel light and airy, and she describes how the power makes her feel. And this might seem something that you could just skip over, right? It seems like, oh, this isn't that important. It's just a small detail, but the small details, especially in narratives, can really be the difference between a good game and a fine one, something that's passable. You're always better off getting those small details in there. I promise. I promise. It's always, and the fact that it's already made, it was already the game's intro, is why them changing this to a objectively worse version is just confounding to me. I don't understand, because it's already, they already did the work. If this was like, you know, still on the planning board and they were like, we don't have the budget to show that, you know, then that would be a different conversation. It would still be unfortunate that they're having to cut corners in their narrative. But the crazy part about this is that it was already produced. The scenes were already there. Everyone's been paid. The voice actors, the animators, it's already part of the game. So why are we taking it away when it was actually a small detail that added a lot to the game? And I know a lot of people probably don't recognize this, but as someone who is invested in the game and also has a lot of knowledge about creating a narrative, how to tell a story, regardless of what medium it's in, these small details like that can go a long way in terms of investing people. And so allowing Nikki to give her opinions on how the power makes her feel also allows us to think, oh, how would it make us feel? Or how do I feel about the way Nikki feels about this, right? It just engages the player further in the story. It makes them want to know more, makes them want to, you know, think, oh, how is Nikki gonna feel with even more power? You know, is it gonna be good? Is it bad? Aina was a little, you know, we didn't know if she was evil or not. We don't really know, and that's fine. I think that adds to the mystery of everything. Because it inherently defines the Heart of Infinity. Our interaction with Aina defined how we view the Heart of Infinity. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it neutral? Does it depend, right? Because that is the case with the Heart of Infinity, right? It's not inherently good or evil. It's just a lot of power. And humans are notoriously can be heavily influenced. It takes a strong will, a strong heart to be able to navigate our lives, even in the real world. And fantasy games are nothing but exaggerations of real life struggles. And this is one of them, of having the power within yourself for good and for evil. And you deciding how you go about your life, right? That's what this is essentially, the greater theme this is echoing in like real world terms, at least in my opinion. I think that's what they're doing. But the original intro allows us these moments of interpretation. The new intro doesn't. We don't have time for Nikki's reaction. We don't have time to see how it makes her feel. We don't have time for any of that. It's just go, 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 new information, spectacle, spectacle, spectacle. But in the original intro, we get time to explore, time to investigate, time to see how Nikki feels, time to learn who she is, what she's like, you know, how does all this new power, how does this new place make her feel? And what was most endearing about Nikki is that despite all of this crazy stuff, she has this very carefree, like wanderlust quality about her that's just so cute. She's in this place and there is danger, and she realizes that she's kind of in over her head, but she's like, you know what? This place is amazing, right? We have clothes that give us power. That's sick. I want to know more about this, right? And it's endearing because even though, you know, she's saddled with a responsibility she doesn't understand, and she kind of knows that, and she wants answers, she also has this strength of will and this determination to enjoy her experience. And that is and personally, that's one of my favorite parts of her character, is this determination to make something of her adventure and not have it be completely defined by the Heart of Infinity, right? And her interactions in Stoneville and Flourish and stuff and all the abandoned district, she doesn't allow the Heart of Infinity to be the only thing that guides her path, right? She becomes friends with all of these different NPCs, and that is what she prioritizes over the Heart of Infinity. And that's part of like the overall message too, right? Sorry, I think I'm going on a tangent, but my point is the original intro allows us this reflection on Nikki. It takes us step by step into the world. We don't get into the open world in Mirrorland until well into the tutorial. And I like this. I like this because it gives you appetizers until you finally open those memorial doors and you're finally let out into the open world, and you're like, oh my gosh, because the world is beautiful. There's animals and bugs and collectibles, and the environment is so beautiful, and you just want to go everywhere. You can't wait to craft dresses, and and you can't wait to pull and get currency and learn more about the characters. And, you know, all of that is now different. All of that is speed run now. And instead we get this bombardment of spectacle, and then we're shoved into Flourish, and there is no transition between the Sea of Stars, Ina, and Flourish in the freaking guild, okay? Imagine for a second you're a new player and you're bombarded in the Sea of Stars, space whales, all that, and then suddenly you're talking to this blonde chick in a guild of a town that's very normal looking. You're like, how did we go from space whales to to country town? I mean, maybe some people don't really care, but I feel like a new player is gonna be more than likely disappointed with Flourish because they're like, this isn't space whales and magic and flying and all that, right? This is just a cute, quaint fantasy country town. What am I doing here, right? There's no transition. It's just you're in this insane spectacle area, and then you're just thrown into this area with no precursor, no buildup. In the original, as we were going through the memorial, right, to get to Flourish, and we have the cutscene where Nikki's like skipping down the hill with Momo, and she's enjoying the sun and the breeze and the beautiful sights, and we get that gorgeous opening into Flourish's hills and the wish factory in the distance and the town, and we're just shoved into Flourish in the new one. But the old one, we could read little bits of info, like lore in the memorial. We could investigate murals and like, oh my gosh, is that a dragon? Oh my gosh, is that a map? Who are these mysterious figures, the 8, led by Dexter, on the memorial murals? And of course, not every player is going to look at that or maybe read that, but we're taking it in, and that's building up to Flourish, right? It's Flourish and Wishfield, not just Flourish, but Wishfield's history, and it's giving you little, like I said, appetizers to what we're gonna actually go see. And this is done well. I think this is good. Some people, I don't know, I thought the original consensus on the intro was fairly good. I don't think people felt it was too long or too boring. Maybe some people did, and if that's preference, then that's, you know, they're valid to have that preference or that opinion. But I think objectively speaking, from a literary analytical lens, it was fine. It did its job really well in establishing every new place and every new event that Nikki encountered. Meeting Dada in the memorial was a little random, but it makes sense. She's patrolling because there are S-lings in there, and the memorial is still, it's run down, but it's still sacred. It's where the Cadence-born hangs out, so it's not like it's completely it's not like it would be completely unthinkable then a Flourish guild member would be patrolling that area, right? So while it felt random in the moment, I can see how someone might make that argument. I still think it makes sense narratively. It's not out of the blue, right? And that's how we are invited to the guild, because Dada realizes, oh my gosh, you can manipulate whim. Are you a stylist? And of course, Nikki has, and the player has no idea what a stylist is, and Dada's able to explain this. And she also introduces the concept of a pair pal because she gets called back to the guild. I think that's fine because we're introducing the small concepts that are important that we will expand upon once we actually get to the guild. And it also doesn't overload the player with information all at once. We're not getting exposition dumped on, right? We're just given small bits, very important bits about the world. And then they're like, hey, go into the open world and come back to the guild when you want to restart the story, right? And there's this freedom of being able to explore, to take in the sights. And so when you see Flourish, you go, wow, look at this town. Look at these people. Oh, it's so cute. Look at the puppy. But a new player is going to go, what are we looking at here? I just came from space whales. I'm sorry, I can't stop referencing the space whales. It's just too easy. It's just too easy. But you know what I'm saying is that there is a insane contrast to new players experiencing the Sea of Stars intro and then Flourish, and there's no build up to Flourish whatsoever. I don't think that you can't have a contrast thing where you have lots of spectacle and then, you know, lower the spectacle level. I think that can work, but the way in which the original intro built up to Flourish assisted in connecting the player to Flourish and getting us interested in Flourish's story, because the first couple of chapters of the main story revolve around Flourish, Flourish's history, Flourish's people, the Wishing One, their relationship with the sprites. That is the whole point of the initial chapters. And so when you go from the Sea of Stars in the new intro, and then you're shunted into this story about people with flying paper cranes and talking to two children in front of a big tree, you're like, what the heck is going on? Where is the important stuff? You're automatically gonna assume that this is just not important, because the opening of the story, right? The opening of the game, I should say, does not lead into this, the Flourish chapters at all, right? Imagine talking to the two kids by the Great Wish Tree, you know, after meeting Giovanni. Imagine doing all that after the Sea of Stars. You're like, what does that have to do with this, right? There's not really a connection, because the way in which they introduce the concept of the Heart of Infinity and them skipping through the importance of the Whim Stars and gathering the Whim Stars, gathering power, gathering outfits, that's rushed now, right? That's just spoken to you instead of you as Nikki experiencing this and Nikki having an opinion about how she feels about it, right? All of that's gone. So we don't understand how deeply connected the Whim and the Whim Stars and the Heart of Infinity is, not just to Nikki, but the world, the people, right? How it affects their lives, and the connection between the ability outfits and how it's literally empowered this entire world, right? Mirrorland as a whole runs on the power of Whim. The ability outfits allow everyone their means of living, right? Their jobs, their hobbies, their passions, war, prosperity, all of it is built on the Whim, on the ability outfits. And I feel like obviously we're not given all of that in the intro, but the original intro does a good job establishing, right? Laying the foundation for us to understand this easier later. And I feel like the new intro does not. The new intro overwhelms, and some people might remember, right? Some people might remember, but a brand new player who has no prior Nikki knowledge, right? Not a franchise player, is gonna be lost. Even if they want to pay attention, even if they want to, you know, sleuth and be a detective with the lore, it's a horrible start, in my opinion, compared to the old one. Okay, let me rephrase. Objectively worse than the original intro. And I don't know why they changed this. I know they're probably very proud of the animations in the Sea of Stars, because it is beautiful. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's not. The music is gorgeous, the visuals are gorgeous, the dresses are beautiful, right? But none of that really means anything if there's no narrative supporting it, if there's no context or knowledge, or at least emotional attachment to carry that spectacle. Because spectacle only goes so far. And when there's spectacle without a foundation, you get a feeling of shallowness, right? That no matter how beautiful a thing is, if there's nothing that is impacting you about it, aside from the fact that it's pretty or flashy or whatever, you're not gonna attach to it. It becomes meaningless, because no matter how gorgeous it looks, I don't feel anything about it, because the game is not offering me anything to attach to, whether that be our protagonist, which it should be most importantly, especially in a game like this, right? If there's a theme or motif or something being said about real life, it's a narrative, right? It's supposed to be telling a story, but I don't feel like the initial intro tells us a story. It just shoves information and visuals at you, and that's it. And it feels like the narrative's like, make with that what you will, and we're moving on, let's go. And I don't like that. I think the original intro did a much better job introducing people to this world, not just to Maryland, but to Nikki especially, and the heart of this game, and what our journey is going to be defined by ultimately, right? Is the Heart of Infinity, the power we collect, and how Nikki decides to use it. and who she helps, who she doesn't, will all have meaning because we fundamentally understand that her choices matter. Who she is and how she treats others matters because the power within her literally is defined by it. And it's life or death, right? It'll mean the destruction of the whole world if mistakes are made, right? So all of that, I feel, was set up in the original. And unfortunately, as spectacular as the new intro animations were, that lacked context and it lacked impact, despite how pretty it was to watch. And I think a lot of people feel this way. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Please, please share below. I'd love to hear from people who are not franchise players, so people like me who Infinity Nikki is your first Nikki game. And then I also really want to hear from franchise players because I know you guys have a lot to say. I mean, scrolling Twitter, Infinity Nikki Twitter is just a mess right now. And I really am curious to hear you guys articulate your thoughts on this because the Sea of Stars, in essence, is supposed to cater to returning franchise players, right? And introduce this franchise, you know, event to new players too. And as a new player, what the heck is going on? I don't even know the importance of the Sea of Stars. I don't even know what it is. Is it this island, this place? I know the seer describes it as like a place where time is still, but I still don't really understand its place within Mirrorland as it's been established to us before, right? The only understanding I have of timelines is the little Giovanni spoke about. And if you actually I mean, I'm not going to get into this in this video because this is a slightly different thing, but there is a side quest that explains, you know, what happened with Giovanni. I'm not going to give any story spoilers, just in case. But there is more details that were brought up by the seer about timelines and stuff. And as someone who's played since day one, I'm still a little lost as to what the Sea of Stars is and its relevance to Nikki's journey as it was left in the last patch. There is absolutely zero continuation between where we left off with Nikki in the main story, right? So not accounting for events, which I still account as canon, but in terms of main story content, there's no continuation. Zero. And so that's confusing because this now feels like a completely surgically removed element of the story that I don't know how to contextualize. Where do I put this? How do I put this on the timeline? Where do I fit this in to Nikki's journey? Where's its relevancy to her place in the story right now and the people and places that she's helped, right? Flourish, Stoneville, the Abandoned District, the Wishing Woods. How does this fit into all of that? What's the relevance, right, to that? And I don't know. I'm confused. I'm confused because nothing feels connected. So that's a critique I have. This patch feels like a fever dream because as beautiful as the dresses and the animation and music are, I have no idea how it's connected to anything else. And one of the things this game has done well in the past is connect. You know, everything felt connected. All of the lore, like the world building, felt relevant to the main story, which is why I got so invested and why I stopped to read all the lore, because the game taught me, hey, if you pay attention to the little lore bits, that will be some Easter eggs, some key info for the actual main story. It means something. If you take the time to invest in the world building, it will pay off. You will know a little bit more about the main story and what's happening in the main story. Like, because I read the lore, I knew who Giovanni was, in his last name, in all that stuff. I knew that before it was revealed in the main story because it was in the lore and like little Easter eggs. And I like put it together and was able to predict his last name and his connection to certain things. And I would, if people who didn't read the lore wouldn't know that. So the game taught me, hey, we did a lot of work on our lore. We did a lot of work on our world building, and it all weaves together into our main story. And to have that suddenly be not a thing, right? The Sea of Stars is just feels like it's been slapped on top of the game in a way that feels disconnected. I don't know what to make of it. Sure, it's beautiful. Sure, it's interesting, right? I would love to know about the space whales. Sorry. I'd love to know more about this, right? It does look intriguing, and the seer seems very mysterious, and I'm sure she'll pop up more, but the absolute clusterfuck of story consistency and its lack of consistency is unfortunate and disappointing. As someone from, coming from someone who is very invested in the narrative of this game, and I think it's one of its strengths, right, alongside the character work and the world building, it sucks that this patch that had so much potential, like I was excited because so many franchise players were like, oh my gosh, the Sea of Stars, this is like their big thing. They never mess up this this thing because this is like the big event for each Nikki game. So I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, we're gonna get a feast of lore, and the trailers looked amazing. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I just ended up being very confused, and poor new players. Their experience is gonna be completely different from OG players of Infinity Nikki, and it's a shame because the original intro really did a great job holding the player's hand and slowly giving them a taste of what's in store for them in this game. I really truly think it established what it should have. It established Nikki, it connected the players to Nikki, it connected the players to Mirrorland, and made people excited to explore, excited to learn more about the heart, to get collected, to go collect the Whim Stars, to grow her power, the mystery about the ability outfits, right? Especially the miracle outfits. I remember being so intrigued. I'm like, oh my gosh, like these gotta be so powerful because the Infinity, the heart of Infinity, I don't really know much about it, but it seems like this like divine power and these miracle outfits, it gotta be such a big deal, right? And I feel like none of that is built up to in the new intro, right? At all. So I'm gonna stop ranting now. I hope what I said has made sense. Again, please let me know down below your thoughts, whether you're a brand new player to the game in general, or if you're like me and Infinity Nikki is your first Nikki game, and you've been playing for a while, like you had the original intro, and your thoughts on that, or if you're a franchise player, please let me know what you think and like how you thought the Sea of Stars was handled, because I have no knowledge about the Sea of Stars and like what it's supposed to mean, how it's supposed to impact the story, but you guys do, and you guys will be able to tell me like, whether you thought it was executed well, or if you thought parts of it were good, or felt similar to how other Sea of Star events have gone, right, in the other games, or if you felt it was all a mess. And even though you were being catered to, right, because I believe the franchise players were being catered to with the Sea of Stars, was that successful? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I saw a Twitter post earlier today at the time of recording that the rating for Infinity Nikki was down to like a whopping 1.6 stars, which is nuts. That is nuts how low that is. So anyways, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave them down below. Thank you so much for listening to me chat about this. I had to get this off my chest. I'm sorry I'm a little behind on my on my other Infinity Nikki content. Trust me, I'm still gonna make analysis videos. I had some questions about that. Do not worry. I'm still covering the main story chapters. I'm still gonna be uploading my Let's Play videos because I find it fun to edit and share my experience. So that's not going away. I'm still gonna be playing this game. I just hope that there is something that's done, right? There's something that's done about the story. And also I'm not gonna get too much into this in this video, because again, this video is already a little long, but the 11-piece 5-star, outfits and the just the level of disconnect between the devs and the player base, right? That's happening right now due to the company's decisions. I think there's a lot that needs to be done in order to build trust again between the players and the company. And it's unfortunate because I love this game. And I'm not saying that to like glaze or anything, because this whole video has been a freaking critique. I love this game, and there's so much potential in this world, and the dresses and everything. There's so much. The fandom is so broad, and every Nikki I have met, like in game and pictures and on Twitter, like obviously there's those crazies, but for the most part, it's just a bunch of people coming together and being so supportive. Like the Nikki fandom, at least to me, has felt so welcoming and so warm, and people are just so excited to be a part of these journeys together. And it's like the representation of womanhood and sisterhood, and obviously not just women play this game, right? Men can play this game, and it's not weird or whatever. It's literally, if you enjoy this game, you do, right? It doesn't matter what kind of, what sex or gender or sexuality you have. Anyone can enjoy this game. But obviously it's made to cater towards young women who want to see themselves represented and want to live their childhood dreams of dressing themselves in whatever they want and having power and being able to explore these gorgeous fantasy places and just get to meet all these interesting characters, these people, and have amazing adventures. And there is so much potential in that. Endless potential, infinite. See what I did there? Infinite potential. And I hope that the game is the trust is rebuilt and that they provide fixes. I know that there's also been controversy about the special stars, the new stars for the palettes and stuff from the event that were being taken away because there was like a bug. I don't know much about that, so I'm not going to speak on it. I hope that all of this is resolved. Obviously, the narrative side of things is my niche, is my expertise. So I can't speak on other aspects of the drama, although I am very aware of it, and I'm on the fandom's side when it comes to like predatory outfit practices, with there being like so many pieces and both outfits running at the same time, and it's just a lot. So I love this game. I really want to see it fix itself and bridges be repaired, and the narrative kind of recenter itself. Like, I would not be mad if they just changed it back. Like, I don't care. Like, change it back and find another way to integrate the Sea of Stars into the experience for both, players who are already playing the game and new players. If they want to wow the new players with the Sea of Stars stuff, I'm sure they can fit that in somewhere. But I think the original intro is very powerful in the fact that it's methodical in introducing elements of the story that are very important to the experience, and that are vital to the experience, and not just the gameplay, but the emotional attachment and experience people will have. So all my socials are down in the description of the video. So if you would like to join the channel Discord, feel free. We're super friendly over there, very chill. We play Nvidia Nikki, Genshin, HSR, all that stuff. So it's really not like specific to one fandom. We're just kind of a community that loves to share what makes us happy. So definitely come check us out if you would like to. No pressure to talk. Like, a lot of the times people will join just to get notifications, because I do notify and update stuff about when I stream on Twitch, and any YouTube video updates and stuff I do post there. So if you just want notifications or updates and stuff and don't really want to engage, that's totally fine. No pressure to talk if you don't want to. But anyways, I will see you guys in the next one.